Hello everyone, and welcome to part 10 of how to make Breakout in Unity. So last time we made it so when you destroy all of the blocks, you get to move on to another scene. So we have this test scene and you move on to this scene after destroying all these blocks. In this episode, we are going to make it so when you destroy the blocks, it fades, the screen will fade to black, and then it transitions to the next level. So instead of just abruptly jumping to the next scene. So let's get started. I am going to go into my scripts for my game manager. Let's open that here. And the modification I'm going to do to the script is to make it so it has a timer that plays when the block count reaches 0. And then that timer will just check how many seconds has passed through the game. And based on that, it will just go to the next scene. That way the game has enough time to play out that last block destruction sound, and it's not such an abrupt transition from one scene to another. Now the first thing I'm going to do is declare a private integer called seconds. And this will check the number of seconds that has passed by. Actually, we want this to be a float, just because it'll give us a more accurate measurement of how much time has passed. And when our block count reaches 0, we don't want to load the scene anymore, at least not for now. And we want to say seconds plus equals time dot delta time. Now what time dot delta time means is the amount of seconds that has passed from this current frame to the one before. So I'll just move this outside the if statement for now, just so I can show you what's going on. When I click play, let's see what console prints. I forgot to add the print statement. So just to show you what's going on, I'm going to print the seconds count. And now you can see the console. If I clear it and play, it's showing a change in time. And this should be 1 second, or however many frames per 1 second. And that is exactly what we're going to do to control when we get to load the next scene. Now, back into our block count, we uncomment this, and we are going to say we're going to move our seconds time into here, and otherwise we want to have our seconds equal 0. And the reason I do this is because I don't want to keep track of time unless we have destroyed the blocks and we're ready to move on to the next level. Now, if seconds, let's just make it about 3 seconds. And we want this to be greater than or equal to, because it's highly unlikely that it'll be exactly 3 seconds. Alright, so if I were to click play, I'll destroy these blocks, except to the last one, and then show you what happens. So as you can see, there's only one block in the scene. Now if I break it, our seconds time counts up, and once it reaches 3, it moves on to the next scene. Now we could make it so you can't lose lives during this transition. The way I'm going to do that is by going into the ball controller, and where it says GM lives minus minus, we are going to change it so we check for this block count in our game manager and see if it's not equal to 0. So let's go down to GM lives minus minus. If GM dot block count is not equal to 0, decrement lives. This way the game doesn't. This way, if the ball goes below the threshold before it loads the next level, you won't accidentally lose a life. Now we can just make the game fade to black when it's loading the new scene. So let me walk you through exactly how we're going to make the game fade to black. So what I'm going to do, sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is create a sprite of shape square. And let's just name this, well, we can just name it square. And what this is just a primitive 2D sprite that we're going to use for our scene in order to make it transition. Just fade to black, and then we're done. So I'm going to center this at 0, 0, and then go to the sprite renderer color and make it black. After that, I'm going to scale it so it can fit inside the boundaries of our screen. Could also change it from here. The size just seems to be about 2515. Yeah, that seems good. Now, also you got to make sure that it's in front of the game objects, but not in front of the camera. Otherwise, you won't be able to see this fade out. So, now I'm going to make this a child of the game manager. And the reason I do that is because in here, I want to declare a private sprite renderer because we want to access the sprite renderer component in our square. Let's just name it rend. And we want rend to be a get component in child for our sprite renderer. In our update function, we want to say that rend is equal to, rend.color is equal to a new vector 4. And this is because there are 4 components to the sprite renderer's color, and that's the amount of red, green, blue, and your alpha channel. So when it comes to these sprites, it goes through a color of red, green, and blue. There is even a color wheel that you can look up in order to, because it's not like real life how paint, you can mix together like blue and yellow to make green. It's a little complicated than that. So for this, for black, we want to have 0 for our red, 0 for our green, 0 for our blue. And we also want to start at 0 for our alpha. And this is because we want our sprite to remain invisible as long as the game is in its play mode. So, now that we're accessing our color component, I also want to declare a private float that will read in the alpha value. We're going to initialize it to 0, and this is going to be used to modify the 4th component in our vector 4. So when the block count becomes 0, let's increment alpha by time.delta time. And now alpha is a percentage that goes from 0 to 1, where 0 is completely invisible and 1 is solid, completely opaque. And then anything in between is more or less. So that's why you need to add it by some sort of fraction. And since we want this to take about 3 seconds, let's multiply it by 0.3 by approximately 1/3. So this, when there's 0 blocks on the scene, it will become more and more dark, and then we'll load the next scene. So let's click play, and let's fire our ball. Now it should be getting, there it goes. Now we could speed it up a bit, maybe 2 seconds is long enough. Now, let's see how that works. Yeah, that's much better. So, what do we have going on here? So what this is telling us is that our game object that we had in the last scene is no longer here. Now, we need that square object. So let's just copy and paste it into our next scene. And that should get rid of the error. Yep, make it a child of the game manager. And if I were to click play here, it's invisible, which is exactly how we intended. However, is it invisible when we transition from one scene to another? It is. Perfect. Now what I want to do is just take the game manager and make it into a prefab. This way I can easily just bring all this stuff in whenever I want to make a new level. And the same goes for our bat and our camera. And these are basically the building blocks of our levels that we're going to create. And we could just very easily drag and drop them in. However, we do come into an issue in here. We are loading scene 1. Now, we want to have, so when we're on level 0, we want to load level 1 when we beat that. When we're on level 1, we want to load level 2 when we beat that. So because of that, we're going to need a variable to control our next scene that we're loading. And after that, we can begin working on creating our new levels. So I'm going to declare a private int, and I am going to name it, actually, I want a static int. And this is because I don't want the value of the level that I'm at to be deleted when I go open a new level. So I'm going to name this level num. Let's initialize it to 0. And we're going to have our level num be incremented whenever our seconds is 2. And then we're going to load scene level num. And the way this works is on the first level in the game, our number is 0. And then once you destroy all the blocks and we have our scene transition, the level number increments to 1. And then we tell the game that we want to load level 1. And just to show you that it's working, let's just play the scene, destroy this block, and then we have our scene transition, and here's our new level. And I didn't receive any errors. However, I did notice that our bat appears to be in front of our transitionary square. So here we have a z of 0. Here we have, that's odd. Yeah, our block is in front. You could sometimes go into 3D view to see, but it doesn't always work, like something like this, but that doesn't always help. Or you could just check the values of where all the objects are. For this, we have our game manager at z equals -10, and then our square at +10. So that puts our square at 0 for our z-axis. Meanwhile, our bat is also at 0. So our bat appears in front. So we just want to move this to, say, -5. So now if I were to click play, we should see, let's try that again. We should see our bat behind the transition. Okay, that didn't work. I'm going to pause it just to sort it out. Okay, I repositioned the black square to z equals 5, and that seems where we want it to be, so our transition also includes the bat and the ball. So, that wraps it up for this video. On the next one, we should be ready to create our levels. And thanks to what I've done here, we'll just be able to drag and drop all these to the scene and then go from there. And in the next episode, we're also going to create the game over and the victory screen that displays your final score. And we'll also create a start menu that allows you to start the game. So, thank you for watching. And since this tutorial series is almost finished, if you have any suggestions for future tutorials, please let me know. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Goodbye.